started, everyone. Good morning, happy Thursday. Nice to see you all again. If anyone is on the call who's new, welcome. My name is David Severance. I'm one of the coaches here at Chirag Shah Coaching. Delighted to be with you. My sessions are typically a little bit different from Chirag's, and my hope is that when you get off the sessions with me and you think about what happens here, that hopefully you say to yourself, David gives me different ways for me to think about my business and actions I can take to help it grow bigger, better, faster. So the topic we've been talking about all week is systems. We've been talking about systems that we can set up, we don't set up, how do they work for us, processes that enable us to be successful at what we do. And today we're going to talk about this elusive trust that we have. That is, we're going to look at the systems that we sometimes set up or think we ought to set up, but then don't utilize to the best of our abilities for whatever reason that is. So I'm going to ask you a question or two to get started. And then we'll have a couple of slides I want to share about this. That's going to explain why it's hard for our brain to actually stick with a process or a system that we set up for ourselves. And then we'll hear from a couple of best practices. So let me start by asking you, what is a part of your business that is a system or a process that you know is a good thing to do, you know it can support your being successful, but you don't follow it completely, or you don't do it as much as you should, or you don't do it as regularly as you should? What's a part of your business that you're perhaps not trusting or not utilizing to the max? Please put something into the chat box, or I'd like to have one or two people come off of mute. Allie, go ahead.
I am good with the process from like start to the end of the transaction, and then the part where I falter is post-transaction, like keeping in touch with people.
Got it. All right, that's a perfect example. We all know how valuable it is for us to have a good relationship after the transaction and how that translates into future business, and yet we may struggle to do it sometimes. Thank you, Allie. Let's hear from one more person. What's an aspect of your business that you think you should be doing better, or you know is really important, but you just don't get around to it, or whatever? There's a whole lot of them in there. I'm sure you must recognize something. Barbara, how about you? Can't think of anything, okay? How about you, Ryan? What's a part of your business that you know should be there to support your success, but you don't make the most use of it?
I put it in the chat, but I think it's just having a checklist during the transaction and looking at it weekly or daily.
Got it.
I kind of have the transaction name and the client name. It's like, okay, what do I need to do today for this, if anything? But I'm not following a checklist.
Got it. That's another perfect example. And there's so many more. I mean, keeping your CRM up to date is important, but we don't always get to it. Making your calls every day or every week, whatever that schedule is for you, and we don't get to it. There's so many aspects of this process from beginning to end that ought to help us be successful that we don't always follow. And so what's happening is one part of our brain is saying, I should do this to be successful. Let's say, like, I need to make calls for an hour every day, and if I do that, I'll be successful. Or another part of it is saying, got to keep that CRM updated because I'm going to need it next time I talk to that client. And yet we don't get to it. So one part of our brain is saying do something, but there's another part of our brain that's saying do something else. Ignore it, put it off, leave it till tomorrow, focus on something else right now, something like that. And this is, when you think about it, it's kind of silly, right? We're trying to be successful, and we know that it can help us succeed to have a great CRM or to do our calls each day or each week. And yet there's another part of our brain that gets in the way of doing that. So where does this come from, and how can this really affect our success? Well, let me pull up a couple of slides here, some things for us to think about on this. Okay. Trust the systems and the process. This is something we don't typically think about in terms of the success of our business, but it's absolutely influencing your success. I guarantee you could have more money at the end of the year. You're actually leaving money on the table by not trusting the systems and processes that you have or that you could have. Let's look into this just a little bit here. So here are a couple of very successful folks in different fields. Number one, you see on the top left, Simone Biles, greatest gymnast in the world, perhaps the greatest gymnast of all time. She started doing gymnastics when she was 7 years old. She quit school when she was 15 and started homeschooling so that she could work out 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that became her routine. That became her system and process. And guess what? From the time she went from 15 to 20, 5 years to a world champion, maybe the best athlete ever, the best gymnast ever. On the right upper part of the screen, we have a guy named Philip. I found him on the Weight Watchers page. Philip was posted there as an example of Weight Watchers success. He lost 171 pounds. It took him 2 years to do that. He obviously had a process for it. He was obviously working through Weight Watchers and he was exercising and doing some other things. He had a routine, he had a process and a system to help him succeed, and he stuck with it for 2 years and he's lost 171 pounds. I have a lot of respect for that. There's a lot of people who try to lose weight and it's not easy. And if you've ever tried, you know it's not easy. Here's a person who created a system, created a process, and trusted the process. It took 2 years, has to have patience, but tremendous success at the end. And on the bottom, some of you may know our own Ethan Leifer, an agent in New York City, extremely successful. Ethan's approach to business is really quite simple and straightforward. I've talked with him about it. You may have seen him on an earlier call, Meet the Agent call. I asked him one time, how did you make your business successful from the very beginning? Because he was new to the field. He hasn't been in the business as long as many other people. And I asked him, how did you kind of like start this thing, successfully? And he said, David, it was very simple. All I did was for the first year, I made three hours of calls every single day. That's all I did. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. I did nothing but call. And within 6 months, his business was off and running. And now he's got a big team, very successful, large GCI, and he pays somebody else to make all those calls. But the point was he had a very simple system. And the way he rationalized it was, for every 100 calls, I get a listing appointment. And if I win 1 out of 10 listing appointments, I get a client. And so the way I rationalize it is what he said was, for every 1,000 calls, I get a client. So all I have to do is make 1,000 calls and I'll get a client. It's guaranteed. That's the statistic. We all know the statistic, and I'm just playing the odds. And so he just made call after call after call after call. And the way he rationalized, or the way he kind of framed it in his mind was, he said, look, if one client is worth $30,000 for me, and it takes me 1,000 calls to get there, then the way I told myself was, I'm paying myself $30 for every call that I make. And of course, most of them won't pan out. But at the end of the day, one of them will. And that's $30,000 for me. So here's a person who had a simple system, couldn't be simpler. He didn't know the business. He wasn't coming as a legacy. His parents weren't in the business or anything. That was his system. That was his process. He trusted it and he succeeded. So here are 3 very different examples of people who've created systems and trusted the systems they've created long enough to be able to experience the success that they wanted to have. So let's look at why so many of us struggle to do this. Why don't we follow the process or the systems? I've interviewed a lot of people about how they're successful, how they're not so successful. And the answers that typically come up when we ask this question is, first, many people say, I'm not sure if it's going to pay off. It's a lot of investment in my time up front. It's a lot of effort. Imagine somebody trying to lose weight. I want to cut this out, cut that out, got to work out every single day. I'm not sure how much I'm going to lose. It's not certain to me. So I'm not sure if it'll pay off. That's a very good excuse and reason to not follow the process. Second, see if this ever applies to you. We let the urgent overrule the important. We get stuck managing whatever the crisis of today is, and we put off all the other stuff because this is so important that has to be solved right now. And so the other stuff keeps getting put off tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day. And so whatever system we had, it actually kind of gets blown out of the water because we focus on the crisis of the day, the firefighting of the day. And third, how about this one? We focus on what's easy and familiar, meaning there's certain things that we like about doing in our business or certain things that we have a background in. Let's say it's the marketing side of it. Let's say it's the technology side of it. And we're comfortable doing those things, but some other parts of our business that are also important, we tend to push to the side just because they're not as easy for us or they're not as familiar for us. So these are 3 common reasons that we may use to take us out of a system that could help us succeed. You could turn any of these three around. If any of these is true for you, turning that one around could make a huge difference for your business. Literally, if it translates to 2 more clients this year, that's $60,000, $80,000, even maybe $100,000, depending on the clients. It's a huge amount of money to leave on the table just because one of these particular responses is a common one for you. Let's talk for just a minute about why it's difficult for us to stay focused. A lot of research has been done in this area. And it's pretty interesting, actually, how our brains process what's going around us. And so stick with me here for about 2 minutes. I'll get into psychology a little bit, and then I'm sure you'll see how it relates to your experience or other folks you've seen around you. This work started with looking actually at kids in prisons. They went to some child detention centers, and they were trying to understand why were some kids motivated to always follow the rules, and other kids would follow the rules for like 2 days and then break the rules. Why was it that certain people were able to kind of sustain that commitment to doing the right thing over time, while others could do it for a day or two and then wouldn't follow the right path anymore? And what they discovered in all that was how our brain processes, or how we perceive the payoff for that particular behavior. And they came up with this idea, ABC. You can write that down if you want. A means antecedent, B means behavior, C means consequence. What they're saying was, when there's an antecedent, which is something that happens ahead of time, and that the consequence matches the antecedent, we have a high level of commitment and steadiness to follow the path. When there's a gap between the antecedent and the consequence, we don't. So for example, if the boss says, everybody, you got to come in on time, and if you don't come in on time, you're going to be in big trouble, you might lose your job. And then let's say George comes in late 3 times in a row and nothing happens to George. Everybody realizes that that antecedent, which was the boss saying everybody has to come in on time, doesn't mean anything. And so everyone's going to stop coming in on time because they see that nothing happened to George. This is kind of what happens in our brain, and this is how it works. Let's say that the action that you're going to take today, which is, let's say, make your calls. All right, let's say your system is to make an hour of calls every day, and you've got a choice today whether to make those calls or not. If the answer or the consequence of making those calls is both certain and immediate, you get the result now. In other words, if I could wave a magic wand and I could say, if you make 10 calls, I guarantee absolutely one of them will say, yes, I have a house to sell. Yes, I want you to list it. Let's get started right now. If that was the circumstance, do you think you'd have any trouble making 10 calls? Absolutely not, because you know it's a guarantee that out of these 10 calls, one of them's going to say yes, if I had that magic wand. So in that particular case, the result is immediate and certain. What if the result's immediate but uncertain? It's a crapshoot. And this is what happens with the lottery. You can go in, you can buy a lottery ticket, and you know within 2 minutes whether you won or not, right? Especially for the immediate lotteries. But you might win, you might lose, you have no idea. In the case of it being certain but in the future, our brain tends to think, I'll worry about it later. So for example, we all know we're going to age. We all know that we're going to have problems with aging, or probably going to have problems with aging. But do we do things about it now? Generally not. We might not eat well. We might drink too much. We might not exercise. A lot of things we might not do. We might do certain behaviors that might lead to cancer down the road, but it's like, I'll deal with it later. And finally, if the result is future oriented and uncertain, then we got to question whether we should even bother to do it at all. And this is a case for like, why do people smoke, right? If everybody knows that smoking greatly increases the chances that you're going to get lung cancer and die from it, why would anyone smoke, and yet millions of people choose to do so? The reason is because the consequence of smoking is both uncertain and it's in the future. I might get cancer, but I might not. And if I do, it's not going to happen today. It's going to happen 20 years from today or 30 years from today. So does it even matter whether I smoke this cigarette right now or not? And so here's the point of all this. Only this lower left box, immediate and certain, is the one that supports us to stay in our trust of the system. All the other boxes, whether it's uncertain or it's future oriented, our brain processes that as it's not worth the effort right now. If you had to make 100 calls today and it's uncertain whether any of them would be successful for you or not, it's easy to put it off. But if you knew that one of them would be successful, absolutely guaranteed, then you probably do it. And so this lower left box is the only space that we can be in mentally that helps us trust the system. And so this is what we need to think about when you go forward is, am I in a system where my brain is processing the result, the consequence of my action as something that may or may not happen or something that may happen in the future? I know it's a little psychological, but it goes directly to your choice right now, whether to make those calls or not, whether to update that CRM or not, whether to do something else that's part of your process or not. And the only way that's easy for you to do that is if your brain classifies it as, I'll get immediate benefit now. And if your brain can't classify it that way, chances are it's going to be a struggle. You're going to have to work at, making it, happen. So how can we trust the process? Well, 3 things to do. Pick one of them. 1, remember that the results are certain. It's just not immediate, right? This was that second box. The results are certain, but it's just not immediate. This is certain future. If you keep your CRM updated, you will benefit somewhere down the line. Some potential client, past client that you talked with, you're going to have the piece of information at hand that you need. It's going to turn that person into a client again. Or making your calls. Absolutely, you're going to find clients making your calls. We know what the statistics are. The statistics don't lie. They're borne out over realistic experience. We know that we can be successful by doing it. If you can just remember that the results are certain, just not immediate, maybe that can help you stay in the game. Second, find an inspiring success story. Pick Simone Biles, pick Philip, pick Ethan, pick anybody you know who stayed in their system as a quick reminder. Put their picture right on top of your computer if you have a laptop, or put it right on the wall next to your desk and say, this person did it, so can I. Because that person did do it, and so can you. Third, think about the process items of your work as an investment that you're making in your business, every bit as important as the investments that you make in hiring another person, or buying a new computer, or buying a nice car so you can drive people to the houses that you're going to see, whatever it is. Whatever the investment that you might make otherwise in your business, you think of that as like a one-time investment. Like, I got to have a great new laptop, or I've got to get some new marketing software, or I've got to hire somebody to be my admin. Those are great investments to make in your business, but those are big one-time investments. These little 1 in 1,000 investments are every bit as important. And if you can remember that that's an investment that you need to make too, invest 10% of your time, 10% of your money, 10% of your energy. By doing that, it will guaranteed translate into customers and dollars at the end of the day. So let me pull this down and ask a couple of questions. Okay, so let me ask you guys, what kind of stands out for you when we talk about this and how it relates to your success or your struggle to succeed in your business? I'm really curious how this hits 1 or 2 of you.
I can share something.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So what rang a bell for me as you were going through the 4 quadrants is like the way that we measure our success says everything. And if the ultimate outcome that you're looking for is to get a listing appointment by making phone calls, it might not happen right away. But if your success is based on, did I or did I not make my 10 phone calls? That being the most important thing that I do today, making 10 phone calls to prospects. If I do that, then that's a win. So it's like that immediate success is something that can fuel you as well.
Love that. Thank you, Ryan. Staying connected to certain and immediate is the way you succeed here. Marina, I got to ask you, you said, I'm so sad now. Please tell me a little bit more about that.
And myself, I'm so disappointed. Like, seriously, I'm about to cry. Sorry, I'm in Orlando with my kids.
That's all right.
Like, I'm so sad, extremely disappointed. I cannot believe I'm not doing this. I'm like talking to you and looking at Vulcan 7, how much it is again. I forgot because I guess with Ethan, he's like, you have to do it. And like, why am I not doing this? I'm like desperately upset at myself.
Got it. Thank you. So I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure Chirag or I would be happy to talk with you offline if you want to talk a little bit more, or anybody. But this is like,
David.
Well, we're happy to help you in any way we can. We're not therapists, but we're happy to help you in any way we can. You know, there's so much that we do with our business because it's easier for us, because it's familiar to us, because we look for the big, we're looking for a home run rather than just a little hit. And these little things in the business absolutely do add up to a lot. Let me just hear from one more person. Luciana, please. You said everything hits me. Can you just say a little bit more about that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not showing myself.
That's all right.
Yes. Well, I'm like Marina. I'm not doing my calls every day. I start and then I go into my routine and I do for a few days and then I stop doing it. And then secondly, I have a system for the transaction, but I'm not having a good system on the CRM, on the feeding of my, also in my marketing. I started a marketing campaign, and then I stopped it. I started selling, and then I stopped. So it's just like consistency. And that makes me almost cry like Marina too.
Got it. Thank you. Well, we're happy to talk with you, Luciana. Everybody, you may think that the pathway to success, the only pathway to success is to practice your objection handling or practice your scripts. And those, that's important stuff. But how you process information and how you bring yourself to your work is every bit as important as those very skill-based or tactical-based skill sets. In other words, in order for you to really be successful as you can be in this business, you don't need to work just on your scripts and just on your objection handling. You need to work on your skill at staying with a system.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, Barbara.
And this might be really stupid question. Who am I calling? Who is everyone calling? You're making all these calls. You want to make 100 calls a day.
Right.
Who should I be calling?
We'll connect you with Ethan if you like.
I'm, brand new to this. Am I calling my friends, my relatives? Are they cold calls? Are they lists of people that, who am I supposed to be calling?
I'll tell you what, Barbara, we'll handle this offline because it's a big question. Obviously, the short answers are spheres of influence, past clients, other relationships that you have. If you're new to the business, of course, you don't have past clients, but you're part of a team, you have other people, and there are a lot of people you can ask. My suggestion is think of the 3 people that you admire the most in the CSC community or any other agents that you feel are really successful, and go interview each of them for 15 minutes. Just say, how do you do this? What's your process? What's your system for doing this? It doesn't mean you need to do it their way. It might not be the right fit for you, but pick 3 people that you admire who you think do things well and see if they can give you 15 minutes of their time. And if you need to match up with somebody in the CSC community, absolutely, we'll get Rachel to help you connect with somebody. This is part of what we want to offer in the community here, is the opportunity for folks like you, Barbara, who have questions, and anybody has questions at one time or another, to be able to go to somebody else to get some input. So if anybody has some support that they'd like to offer Barbara, certainly please reach out to her, let her know that you're there, and that you can give her a little bit of time. So let me just ask, I don't want to make everybody feel so badly, that you're not doing this, you're not doing that. The reality is, in certain areas of our business, we are following the process, or we are following the system. Just in others, we're not. And so it's not like it's a total loss. It's not like we're helpless. We're actually probably doing a lot of things quite well. You may be keeping up your CRM very well, but not making your calls. Or you may make calls very well, but you don't see it your CRM. Okay, sorry, Marina, maybe not either. That's fine. But even something like following up with clients, if one of your kind of trademarks for your business is to stay connected with your client closely throughout the whole relationship, and you're doing that well, give yourself a pat on the back for that, because that's part of the process in the system too. Every bit of that, it's every bit as a part of your success as these other things we're talking about. So one thing you can do after we're done here today is just like take 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever, when you have a few minutes on your own, turn your phone off and just think about the different systems and processes that are a part of your success, or should be a part of your success. And just give yourself a grade on which ones you're doing well and which ones you could use a little bit more work on, or a little bit more success with. And if you need some help from me or Chirag or for somebody else about this, reach out, or you've got plenty of other people here in the community that you can reach out to also. I guarantee you that if you're struggling with your CRM, somebody else on this call is acing that, and they might be able to help you with some part of it. Or if you're struggling with your calls, somebody else like Ethan is acing that. And there may be a way for you to connect with that person and talk a little bit more.
Well, I just want to say
Go ahead, Marina.
to Barbara, this is, well, Compass is amazing, and this community is even better. I have like a weekly, well, Ryan and I've been with each other lately, but I have a weekly call with Ryan, so we like keep each other in check. Now with Ali, we're doing, you know, like getting our system and processes like buyer's booking, etc. Luciana is amazing. Mariuda is like helping me with, because I'm out of town. Like, whatever you need, everybody's here for you, including me. Not that I can be much help, but I'll be there cheering you for sure.
Love to hear that, Marina. And you know what? Give yourself a pat on the back for the calls with Ryan and for the work with Ali. You know, this kind of stuff, being able to do something big like hire the right person is one kind of skill set. We all know it's not easy to find the right person, to hire the right person, and manage the right person. But these little things are also a different skill set, and give yourself a pat on the back for being successful in some of your attempts to do something regularly that supports your business. And then my suggestion is that if you're struggling in another area of your business, don't go for the whole thing in one bite. Pick some small goal that you can practice on until you become really effective. Now, we've heard other people say, who was it a couple of weeks ago said, start with 2 calls a week or 5 calls a week. And that's all you need to do if you don't make any calls. In other words, what I'm saying is develop your ability to set a longer term goal and stick with it. Just like Philip, who had to lose 171 pounds. It's hard to do that, and it takes 2 years. He had to make 1,000 choices, and he had to develop the ability to stay in that game forever. For anybody who's tried to lose weight or just get healthy, just going to the health club 3 days a week is not easy, or 5 days a week, or whatever it is. Our ability to be able to stay in something when the consequence or result is not immediate or certain is one of the most valuable skills we can all develop. And so work on, go ahead, Luciana, something to say?
I'm happy I'm consistent on attending the coaching session for almost a year now, and that keeps me on track as well. So that helps me a lot.
I'm so glad you said that, Luciana. I was going to say that at the very end here in just a moment, but I'm glad you beat me to it. I want to compliment all of you for showing up here every single morning or as often as you do to try to grow yourself, to try to grow your business. That's something that you should recognize is where you're doing it really well. So it's not just that we're happy to see you every morning, we're happy to see that you're developing and displaying the kind of consistent leadership of yourself and or your team that helps you succeed. And so as you think about our conversation today, you think about other areas that could use a little bit more attention from you. Think about picking one of them and picking a very low threshold for yourself, and keep working on that until you really ace that one. And once you've aced it, then move on to something a little bit higher. So for example, with Marina and Ryan, maybe that 1 phone call a week is all that you can handle. That's great. If you spend 30 minutes a week and you end up doing that every week for 2-3 months, give yourselves a big pat on the back. You don't have to make it 2 calls a week or anything like that. But it's the same thing as it would be about keeping your CRM up or making calls or anything else. Pick the goal, stick with it, stay connected to the fact that it can be immediate and certain for you. Don't let your kind of automatic brain like tune it out because it's uncertain or because the result might come in the future. That's where our brain switches off. That's where we rationalize it without even thinking about it, right? It's all unconscious. And that's why it happens, right? This is why so many people struggle in business, because it's unconscious. Our brain gets there before we consciously think about it. And before we know it, we've kind of given up for the day. So yeah, I agree with what Ryan's saying there. Success breeds success. Celebrate the wins you have. Keep working on it. Set low goals that you feel you really can have a good shot at achieving. And if you need help with it, reach out to somebody. Reach out to somebody in the community. Reach out to your coach. Reach out to your sales manager. There's all kinds of resources out there, as long as you remember that this kind of skill, your ability to hang in there, is every bit as important as the big stuff that you do. So thanks for being with us this morning, everybody. Glad to hear that this is valuable to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. And get out there, do a great job, and let us know if you need any support. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.